Welcome to Buffalo Pregame, your source for live Buffalo football discussion, news, analysis, opinions, and more. Presented by ASM Publications and Bills Digest.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Buffalo Pregame. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here with you on this Sunday morning, the day after the Bills' preseason defeat at the hands of the New York Giants. But we're not here to talk about the team result. We're here to really dive deep into player analysis with Erik Turner, chief over there at Cover One. And like I said, we'll dive deep into the Bills' positional battles and newcomers on both sides of the ball and see what they had to offer in this first game action of the 2025 preseason. But each week on Buffalo Pregame, I'll provide updates on the NFL, NHL, and more via daily articles, podcast videos, and more. Please subscribe to Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, along with Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky on Substack, both of which are free of charge. Please also like this post on YouTube, share it with your friends, subscribe, everything you can do to help promote the channel. It's coming along slowly but surely. We truly appreciate all of you tuning in. So hit that like button. And all right, let's get into it. Without further ado, we bring in our guest, Erik Turner of Cover One. Turf to Tape with Sal Capaccio just went live, so be sure to check that out after we get off here. In-depth breakdown there with one of the best men on the beat in Sal Capaccio. Erik, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good. Very busy. It's nice to kind of slow down now, have you control things after our recording. Yeah, it's nuts. You know, with preseason, it's we're still getting those reps in, right? And so watched the game again late last night, broadcast footage, and then this morning at 6 a.m. when the film dropped, I was back at it. So I'm excited to come talk to you about what we saw in this first preseason game.
Yeah, that rings true to me because I know yesterday was interesting for me. It was the first game I covered from home in a while, and it was quite comfortable, to be honest with you. Ordered some pizza, ordered some wings, enjoyed myself, and dove into Bills Giants as we are about to hear on today's podcast. And I want to start with, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe one of the players you were most excited about following this game, and that's newcomer Michael Hoyt. And this is kind of an enigma for the Bills, as he'll be out for the first 6 regular season games due to that PED suspension. But Bills Mafia is going to see plenty of Michael Hoyt throughout the preseason. And what you saw yesterday was continuous penetration in the pocket, impacting the game, and just that size, speed, and athleticism combination really jumping off the screen. Is that what you saw from Hoyt? And can you give us maybe some more in-depth analysis in terms of what allowed him to impact the game the way that he did his first time in a Bills uniform?
I mean, it's not surprising. He's a guy I pegged for the Bills and the offseason and free agency, and he just stood out. He looked like a starter. You know, whether he's going against the first team of the Giants or the second team, he played a lot in that first half. He just stood out and looked like he should be a starter in the league, and that's what's so exciting about what he can bring to the Bills. In LA, he was responsible for those third down situations. He was responsible for setting the games and stunts and different plays and games they were going to run along that D line. Think about how important Kyle Williams was at the end of his career when he was the one doing that for the Bills. So it's exciting to see that, hey, a depth player is going to do that. And we're not even seeing the usage that they use him in LA a lot, all over the place, on the ball, off the ball, inside at D tackle and a 2-point. We are not even seeing that yet. So that's exciting. But he was in and around the ball because of his motor. He's a chaos creator when we're talking rushing the quarterback. Did a great job of adjusting his pass rush line to the quarterback based on where the quarterback was setting up in the pocket. And you just saw him impact the game, whether he was rushing the quarterback or, running against the run. He was just in and around the ball all the time. And for me, he was my tapped in player for Turf to Tape. He was the best player on the field, in my opinion, on the offense and defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, you remember you mentioned his motor. You remember a couple of years ago, Von Miller talking about, I believe, Greg Rousseau feeding him gunpowder and gasoline. And I feel like Michael Hoyt eats gunpowder and gasoline for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That man is always on full go. You see him on camera. You see him on the practice field. And that man's energy seems to be never ending. And I think with 6 games of waiting in the wings and kind of building up that anticipation for Michael Hoyt, what we're going to see when he comes back is kind of a bat out of hell
Yeah.
situation. I'm really excited to see what Michael Hoyt can do, especially as somewhat of a midseason addition for
Yeah.
this after that suspension. And let's stay on the defensive line because, from my perspective, Joey Bosa, in the short period that he was on the field, only a couple drives on the defensive side of the ball, but he seems to be that 3-down player that the Bills have been vowing to use him as this season, and something that the Bills really haven't had before in this Sean McDermott era. You had Von Miller, but I think a little bit different of a player than Joey Bosa. This is a big physical beast that I think can impact the run game and also bring you a potential double-digit sack season if he's able to stay healthy. So I thought he really impacted that play with Ed Oliver on that first 3rd down for the Giants, and really from there, I thought made a couple more impactful plays. So what did you see from Joey Bosa, and what makes you excited about his prospects within this defense?
I mean, he showed that he's a dual purpose player. He can play against a pass and as a run defender. His snap anticipation was very good for his first preseason game in several years, really. I thought his snap anticipation, his ability to convert speed to power and compress the width of the pocket, that showed up. Not necessarily in the sack category, but you saw the pocket collapse and the quarterback have to get it out of his hands. I thought he processed really well from run to pass, and that is what really put him at the point of attack, at the ball carrier, down the line of scrimmage, and tracking that ball really well. And he just plays long. You see him in the run game. He's always got the blocker at arm's length, and he's able to just use his eyes to track the ball well. And you saw him just disengage and throw tackles and tight ends to the wayside, and then go and get the ball down the line of scrimmage on runs away from him. So he definitely was a guy that stood out and got the plus for me as far as players go in this game. And I'm excited to see him in the regular season in some of the higher leverage situations against higher competition as well.
Sure. And I think coming in, and Scott, thanks for tuning in. Erik does a great job. We're very grateful for his time on the podcast. I think when Joey Bosa came in, a lot of Bills fans were expecting him just to be a pass rush specialist due to his injury history and the Bills trying to keep him healthy late into the season. But I think there's ways to go about that while getting that 3-down capability from the player. I think you can potentially give him series off at times, especially early in the season. And also when things start to get out of hand in the second half, kind of laying off the gas pedal
100%.
with Joey Bosa as well. I'm not sure you have to rest him within the key moments of the game. I think it'll be down to limiting his practice reps, limiting to what he does in between games, and then obviously being smart with it throughout the course of the game. And Scott, a question here about Landon Jackson. Not very impressive from my perspective. We'll get to a couple of the impressive rookies in a moment, but it just seems to me Landon Jackson is a bit bulky in everything he does. You saw him kind of get swatted out of the way by the Giants right tackle. I think it was the backup right tackle yesterday. And he just seems to be a little bit sloppy in his mechanics, and he has the big, massive upper body and the great measurements. And I think everything you want in terms of a potential high-level pass rusher, but I think he has a ways to go before he puts it all together. Is that an accurate assessment? Can you elaborate on that? What are your feelings on Landon Jackson early in his career, not panicking at this point by any means?
Yeah, I think he had an up and down game. I obviously the interception was kind of wiped off the board because of being offside. So yeah, that's a big hiccup that you can't have. There were a couple rushes where he was just on the verge of turning the corner, but the offensive lineman was able to kind of wash him by. And I think that's something he's going to have to adjust. He's not going to win as easily as a speed rusher around the arc at the NFL level. So he's got to figure out ways to get to his second moves to break that contact from the offensive lineman. But he did actually have a couple really nice rushes where he won the edge, one with a nice cross chop, but the ball was out. So I do think that it was an up and down performance. And I think you can sense and see him still thinking a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And again, first action against a different offense, a different competition and offensive lineman. So I think it was a good learning experience for him, but I do think there still are times where he is thinking too much and he's not just letting it rip.
Yeah, that's what I've seen from him during my time at training camp and during the offseason program. I just think he's kind of, you use the term, drinking through a fire hose at
Mhm.
times. And I think that is what we're seeing from Landon Jackson, just that, like you're saying, transition from the college level to the pro level and trying to fit in with this Bills defensive line rotation. Just think he has a little bit of a ways to go. He was probably the draft pick that I was most excited about, but
Mhm.
there's two players that have really passed him by, one of which I was not excited about coming out of the draft, and that's TJ Sanders, but also Deion Walker, the big man out of Kentucky. We'll start with Sanders. Walker had the big pass bat down, but I thought Sanders made a more consistent impact during his time on the field and showed what he can provide, I think, when the real bullets start flying during the regular season. His pass rushing ability is undeniable, and he and Ed Oliver alongside one another in pass rushing scenarios, I think could be incredibly, incredibly dangerous on the interior. What were your thoughts on TJ Sanders' performance and perhaps that match with Ed Oliver come
Mhm.
during the regular season? Is that something you think that the Bills could potentially bear
Yeah.
some fruit from?
Yeah, he's gonna get on the field, and he's gonna get on the field a lot in pass rush situations. Go back and watch the game, guys, and you talk about the three first waves of interior defensive linemen: Oliver, Daquan Jones, then it was Carter Ogunjobi, and then it was Sanders and Walker. Sanders and Walker, their speed and ability to penetrate and attack was on another level to the point where they probably shouldn't have been that third wave of interior defensive line.
Right.
Sanders and Walker stood out to me from a pass rush sense. Sanders was not just a pass rush sense, but also as a run defender. I thought Sanders' hand usage, his quickness off the snap, his ability to attack both edges of that guard. So, most of the time he was lining up on the outside shoulder of that guard, sometimes a little wider inside of the tackle, and he's forcing that guard to come out to him. But he would stab inside and make that offensive lineman stop his feet, but then attack the outside shoulder, which is where he was aligned in the first place. So he was creating doubt in the offensive lineman's mind. You saw him quickly win against the guard on the touchdown that dart through. Great play by the quarterback and
Yep.
receiver. But Sanders won quickly, and that's what the Bills need, because you saw early in this game, the Giants were getting rid of the ball quickly. They understand the style of defense. Brian Dable understands the style of defense that the Bills play. So he was getting the ball out of, Russell Wilson's hands, Jackson Dart's hands, and using a lot of RPOs and things like that to get the ball out. TJ Sanders stood out because he was winning quickly. He even made a play in the run game where he darted inside, took on a double team, and freed up his teammates to go make the tackle. He stood out to me. I think he's going to be in there in high leverage situations as a pass rusher from a wide alignment, like you saw him win on that play I was referencing. You're going to see him in there with Ed Oliver and those third downs, those fourth downs, and he is going to make plays. I'm super excited about this player, as I am when it comes to Walker as well. I thought he did a great job of similar things from the nose tackle position of attacking the edges, using his length. Yes, he got that batted pass, but he also was right at the doorstep of the quarterback on another rush on a third down situation where you could see his arm reach out. And if the quarterback had held it a quarter second longer, he would have made a play at the throw.
Mhm.
Instead, it pressured the quarterback, it flustered the quarterback, and the pass went incomplete on third down. So those two guys were really big standouts to me, and their speed just stood out when you watch them on film, especially relative to that second wave of defensive linemen.
Yeah, and that was an under the radar focus of Brandon Beane's through the draft. It wasn't only to beef up the defense at all levels, it was to gain speed at all levels. You go
Yeah.
from Max Harrison at the back end, TJ Sanders, Deion Walker along the defensive line. And with Sanders, I think what you're seeing, it's one thing for a young player to win based off physical traits alone, but when you add that cerebral side of the game, that's really when these young players start to take things to the next level quickly. And that's very encouraging from TJ Sanders. And you talk about Ogunjobi and
Mhm.
Dwayne Carter. Ogunjobi also going to be out for the first 6 games. Dwayne Carter shifting a little bit to one technique this season. I think you're right. I think it's only a matter of time before these two rookies
Yeah.
surpass both of those players in the pecking order, the potential that they've shown, and the NFL ready ability that they've shown. I think they're ready to make an impact right away. And I think it will also serve them well, the rotation that the Bills use. You won't
Right.
be forcing them into the fire far too often. So I think it'll be interesting to see both players
And
develop
Alex,
here.
they added, that size, that length, that physicality that they wanted. It was something they focused on this draft and offseason.
Mhm.
And we kind of saw that, yes, the opposing offense of the Giants they were completing passes at a high clip, but it was stuff underneath. They're playing soft coverage. But think about the quick game that they saw, and guys like Hoyt, Deion Walker, TJ Sanders, and Solomon getting their hands up and into the passing lanes and making a lot of these passes incompletable or just off target just a little bit to force that receiver on the back end to catch it, but have to be kind of drifting to the sideline a little more on third down, which happened, and he's not able to get upfield for the first down. So the length, I think, when you talk about especially like Walker, the length is going to be a huge thing for this defense. It's something that the regime kind of preached early on when they had Leslie Frazier of getting your hands up when this quick game is coming against them and just clogging those passing lanes. I think you're going to see that happen a lot when you have guys like Deion Walker, Hoyt, Landon Jackson, who are going to play some big reps in some big moments.
Chaos, chaos, chaos. That's what the Bills have been trying to create the last 3 years, and they've been successful. They've been one of the few teams in the league to really sustain that ability to take the ball away and to create that havoc on the defensive side of the ball. And you have to give the defensive coaching staff a lot of credit for that. And I think my most positive takeaway of the day was that defensive line. Now, you're going to need that speed and that quick pass rushing ability, as you mentioned, because on the back end, there's some question marks in terms of Tre'Davious White's ability. I thought he had an up and down day. He's always going to struggle with speed and athleticism and kind of covering late into the down, I think. And if the quicker you can get to the quarterback, the more you can help a player like Trey White in coverage. And also on the back end, it's safety, what they're missing there. But we'll start with Trey White. How did you evaluate his day? I thought his confidence, his physicality, his willingness to come up and tackle, which is a key point of a cornerback's ability within this Bills defense. But like I said, he's going to play kind of that cushion coverage, and he needs to sell out to protect that over the top because it's so easy for him to get beat that there are times where there will be easy completions underneath him. And I think we saw that yesterday. And like I said, as the pass rush kind of gets going and they get some guys back on defense, perhaps he's supplemented a little bit. But I thought there were signs of struggle from Tre'Davious White in this game.
And I think part of that is maybe White, but mostly it was a philosophical alignment thing. So as I said, the Giants ran a lot of RPO, so they have that run pass option, right? So they ride the ball in the running back. They're reading someone. And what they run, and Dable used to run it a bunch when he had Josh Allen, it's called free access. So they have a run called, but they also have basically a route by the outside receiver where if the guy's in off coverage, they're going to run a curl or a speed out and take that free access that the cornerback is giving them. And you saw that a bunch because Trey, as you said, they played him off pretty much the entire day, especially when it was on that left hash into the short side of the field. They kept him off, and not necessarily to protect deep in this game, but because, again, they don't want to show too much. Because, honestly, Trey White's looked great this entire camp. Now, he did have to come up on some of those short passes to the flats and make tackles on tight ends and some receivers and running backs. He did miss a tackle. And I think you're going to get that with Trey. Trey understands he needs to come up and make those tackles, but he's not the most forceful tackler. He'll try to snag a leg, but he won't bring the pads and run through the tackle. And you saw him come a little too high on the tight end, but he slid down and grabbed the leg to tackle him. But you also saw him bounce off tackles. I think you're going to get that when it comes to tackling with him. I think that's going to get exposed at times. But I agree. I do think he had an up and down day. I do think that they targeted him. But again, I think that was primarily schematic of playing him in off coverage and what the Giants wanted to do with the quick game, with the RPO stuff, and that free access coverage that they were getting from Trey White.
Yeah, and you heard Sean McDermott talk the game. He was asked by Matt Bovee, scale of 1 to 10, how much they game plan for, especially the first preseason game. He went 0 to 1. So I think that absolutely rings true. And beyond White, I thought another veteran. I'm fading in and out on the video side on my side. You still got me?
I got you. Yep.
All right, sounds good. I'm working on like low internet here. It looks like. But hey, hopefully we can survive here. But another veteran player, Matt Milano. All eyes have been on those two players really throughout training camp, and Milano's ability in the running game is going to be a huge difference maker. You saw it yesterday. I thought the defense, one of the shining lights for them was their ability to slow down the Giants' running game, holding them to about 70 yards throughout the course of the contest. And Milano showed that burst and really that pop on the first play of scrimmage, stopped the ball carrier at the line of scrimmage for no gain. So I think he's confirming the priors here that have developed throughout training camp. If he stays healthy, I think he could be such an X factor in this defense and really a kind of a welcomed addition in a sense, because you didn't know what you were going to get from Matt Milano entering this season. There was talk that maybe the Bills would be better off with Dorian Williams in the lineup. But the more we see from Matt Milano as days go by, he could be the best linebacker on this team and be returning to one of the best linebackers in this league status, dare I say.
You're not wrong. He doesn't look his age. He doesn't look like he's lost a step. In fact, he almost has a little more juice than when we last saw him. And so I'm excited to see what he does going forward. He was flashing in the run game. He quickly triggered downhill and, mucked things up, got into his gap, made the running back bounce a bunch of times, was in and around the line of scrimmage consistently. I thought that when the passes were swung out and flared out to running backs and tight ends, he immediately closed and shut down that airspace and closed down on the runner and brought down those runners in the open field. I think he is continuing the camp that he's had. I think he's standing out, and it's almost like he's a whole new man when you compare him to last year, the back half of last year, where he did stand out a lot, but also when he was that all-pro matchup linebacker. We're going to see that form of Matt Milano again. Again, it just comes down to availability. He's got to stay healthy. And I think that the Bills have some decent linebacker depth that maybe in, like you said, at the end of games when he can get a blow and get someone in there for him, if the Bills are up, several possessions, I think they will manage him that way because he is going to be a huge piece to the Bills linebacker and defense altogether, because the Bills are going to see a lot of guys at the tight end position and running back position that will do some damage if you do not contain them. And Matt Milano appears to be in that matchup linebacker form that we saw several years ago. So I'm super excited about him. And also, I just love studying linebackers, and he's been a guy that I've studied for many, many years.
And over the years under Sean McDermott, outside of Milano, they've struggled to really get that consistent running mate for him. But I think he and Terrell Bernard have developed such a chemistry and a connection that once they get on the field during this regular season, I'm excited to see really what that duo can do together. But I told you my connection was crapping out on me. I knew you were going to lose me.
Looks good.
Yeah, I'm like Nostradamus with this stuff. But John Robert comments, Milano ought to prove himself. You can also see that with Milano. I think maybe in a different situation he wouldn't have played yesterday, just due to his veteran status and really doesn't really have much to prove outside of the return from the injury. And I think that's what it was for Milano yesterday, to prove to everybody and himself that not only are the training camp reports favorable, but his performance on the field against the Giants also continued along that line. So very encouraging there. And elsewhere, you mentioned the depth at the linebacker position with Terrell Bernard not playing due to the hamstring. Dorian Williams still a lingering calf issue. You saw a lot of Joe Andreessen, and I finished the show after the game last night really singing his praises, because if you look at where he came from as a rookie tryout to where he is now, one away from the team lead in tackles yesterday and just consistently all over the field, a near interception, his ability to run sideline to sideline, diagnose as well within this defense has come such a long way from a season ago. And it's not only been fun to watch Buffalo Joe kind of take things by the horns and really run with his opportunity, it's been so impressive to watch him turn into a bona fide NFL contributor.
Listen, in and around the line of scrimmage, when he's at middle linebacker, he's going to make plays, especially when you have guys like Michael Hoyt taking on double teams so that he can shoot the gap on the play side. he's going to sniff out a lot of runs. And yesterday was no different. I think that is a baseline for him. And that ceiling is very high. He's very instinctual. He reads the run blocking keys and concepts very quickly. So much so that a lot of times it's not a 50-50 it's not a 50-50 situation where he's got to engage a blocker, read, then disengage. A lot of times he's ahead of the blocker and where that blocker is trying to beat him to when we're talking that point of contact. Now, he did struggle, I thought, in some of the zones. There were some crossers that got behind him, and he kind of got lost a few times where Cam Lewis, on one occasion, kind of saved his butt, honestly, where there's a crosser coming back behind Andreessen. He lost track of him. Cam Lewis cut him, so he drove down from that post safety position to take it away, forcing the quarterback to move on. So I think there's still a lot of room to grow in that department. But for the Mike linebacker position of getting everything set up pre to post snap, getting the defense set in their plays and coverages, and then making plays in and around the line of scrimmage, like you see from Terrell Bernard, you see that from Andreessen. I just think he needs a little work when it comes to pass coverage, when we're talking zone coverage and that spatial awareness and, hey, what target's coming through my zone, what target's just passing through. But that time that'll come. He's come a long way. Yeah. And I love studying him as well, because I do think he's very instinctual and he trusts his eyes.
Now, you mentioned Cam Lewis within that response. He got some time at safety yesterday due to the injuries on the Bills side. And elsewhere at safety, you had Jordan Hancock, the rookie, drawing some praise from Sean McDermott. He said that something along the lines of, you could tell that certain guys came to play today, and one of them was Jordan Hancock. So impressing the head coach. And obviously the most impressive play was, I believe, he was at that safety position, firing up and going about 20 yards laterally to make the play. It seemed like he was shot out of a cannon on that play. And that just shows what he can bring to the table, that speed, athleticism, and burst at the safety position. And again, along the philosophy of this team trying to add that athleticism and speed all over the field on defense. And hey, if they can get something out of Jordan Hancock, maybe not this year, but in the near future, that could be another nice hit for Brandon Beane. He spent time in nickel corner and safety. I think safety yesterday, due to, as I keep mentioning, the injuries at safety, maybe he spends a little bit more time at nickel as the preseason goes along. But I asked, I believe, your cohort Anthony Prohaska yesterday where he projects best. Where do you project Jordan Hancock, and maybe some evaluation of his performance yesterday?
I don't want to just peg him at one spot. I do think they brought Hancock and his skill set onto this roster to compete with Cam Lewis, who I thought Cam Lewis had a great game yesterday.
Yeah,
I thought
a great camp as well.
Yeah, they love him. The Bills love him, and so it's an uphill battle for Hancock, because Cam Lewis, especially yesterday, reliable, always knows his assignments, and we're talking at multiple positions. He's not afraid to come down and trigger like you see Taron Johnson do in the run game. Cam Lewis did that yesterday, and he's a very forceful tackler. He runs through the tackles and makes impact at the tackle point. Now, last year he was targeted a little bit in coverage. That's where he needs to improve. But we saw a lot of those things I just mentioned for Cam Lewis from Hancock in yesterday's game. Like you said, coming from depth to make tackles and forceful tackles, as you alluded to, that Anthony talked about. And obviously made a big play interception there, but that because of the offside of Landon Jackson, that was called back. But again, throws over the middle. That's what, for years, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, they reap those benefits. And so when those plays happen, they have to capitalize. And unfortunately, because of the flag, they weren't able to capitalize on that. But there's something to be said about being in the right place at the right time. And Hancock showed that yesterday in the pass game, but also in the run game.
All right, let's flip to the other side of the ball. I think I'm satisfied with the defensive side of the ball, but let's start with wide receiver, as people are starting to fall off the Elijah Moore train rather quickly, and the Tyrell Shavers train is now coming full steam ahead, and rightfully so. Shavers has been making plenty of plays throughout training camp and followed it up with a 58-yard reception that I thought he should have taken for a touchdown, but we're not going to negate points on a 58-yard bomb like that. A great play for a player trying to make the team. But when it comes to Moore, on that opening drive, he was streaking across the middle. Trubisky had him wide open, just flat out missed him. And I said this to Mike Bunt yesterday, that could have changed the entire look of Elijah Moore's game yesterday. If he converts that first down early in the game, and you see that speed flash across the field, I think fans are feeling a little bit better with the offseason darling at this point. But there's no doubt he has dealt with what I think was a calf injury and has missed some time, and that's led to lesser production throughout training camp than some other receivers. And when fans are reading the reports, they're looking for Elijah Moore's name, and it's not coming up often enough. And I'm not at this point ready to fall off the wagon and say that Tyrell Shavers, Christian Wilkerson, Laviska Shenault are perhaps truly pushing him for a roster spot. But as time goes along and he continues to fade into the background, those players could potentially sneak in and take a potential fifth roster spot from Elijah Moore. But I think this week, and I said this last night as well, is going to be a key week for him with Josh Allen at that joint practice with the Chicago Bears. That's where I expect Allen to get the most live bullets in terms of this preseason. So if they can establish a connection there and something comes out of that, I think that can kind of catapult him forward. But how do you view this wide receiver position as a whole is my question to you. Joshua Palmer, a nice game yesterday. We've heard about Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir's on the mend. There's no concern with those three. But when you have Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, both of whom have dealt with injuries, Samuel a little bit more, and then you have players like Shenault, Shavers, and Wilkerson coming on really strong, where do you see that back end of the depth chart at the wide receiver position, kind of based on what you saw yesterday?
Yeah, let's start with Moore. I think that maybe he hasn't stood out like fans wanted him to, but I think it's pretty clear from comments from whether it's McDermott or Bean that Moore is going to be on this team. And now you got to add in the injuries to Shakir, obviously the injured, off-injured Curtis Samuel. They got to have some type of replacement or player that can do a lot of what Shakir does, because Shakir is a huge piece to this Bills offense. Just think about just in the screen game, the Bills run a lot of wide receiver screens where they spit it out to Shakir. He had 42% of the Bills screen plays last year. Like, so if he's gets hurt and they just invested in him, they got to have someone that is not a huge drop off, but that can do a lot of what he does to support the offense. And so I think Moore, maybe he hasn't shined all that well, but I think when you get into some games where teams are going to play man coverage, you got to have his type of speed and ability to combat that. Now, what's interesting about, him and even maybe Shavers and Shenault now, you saw Shenault, he was in there on punt returns, kick returns yesterday. They targeted him in the red zone on that back shoulder pass. His size and
played gunner as well.
Yeah, exactly. He's playing all the special teams like Shavers plays all the special teams. Shavers stood out too. But I think there's a pretty good competition now heating up. And you saw it in that game where they want to find out, like in those crucial moments, for example, Shavers, 4-minute drill before halftime. They get the ball back, first play, slant, 2 Shavers. Big play at the end of the half, to kind of convert into 3 points was that stutter post by him, that 58-yard reception that you talked about. Okay, high leverage moments, he produced. He was given the opportunity, he produced. Same with Shenault. Good kick return in that game. A good 50-50 back shoulder ball where he snagged it from Mike White and kept it away from that defender on that play in the low red zone. So that competition, I think, just took another level, another step, because for a while there in camp, Shenault was hurt. And so now they're starting to figure out, okay, we need to heat this up. We need to make this known that this is a true competition by targeting Shenault as a returner, but also in the receiving game. So I think it's going to be a fun finish when it comes to the back end of the wide receiver group, because each of these guys now seems to be making plays when, plays are needed in those high leverage situations.
Yeah, no doubt. And Shavers has been a darling the past few years. And I think they, as Sean McDermott mentioned in his post-game comments, they know what they have in Shavers as a wide receiver. He needs to now prove that capability on special teams, as you mentioned. Wilkerson as well. Does he get in the mix on special teams? Did you mention that in your response? I know players like Jalen Virgil, Shenault are also in the mix. What about Wilkerson? Is he a big factor?
Yeah, I wish he would have got his other foot in on that catch, because that was spectacular body control and hand-eye coordination. And that's what he's kind of stood out to me in that realm, in that niche where the Bills are running play action. They're getting that one-on-one coverage outside, and he's able to make a play like that at the catch point, back shouldering some things. but you also saw him on some crossers. I think for a guy like him, and even more, Elijah Moore to an extent, that's where those kind of guys with some speed and separation ability can help the Bills offense is running more play action. The Bills ran a ton of it yesterday. A lot of those crossers and one-on-one looks in that intermediate area where they need to improve. And I thought that's when the Bills kind of settled in on offenses, that second and third drive and beyond, where they got the run game going, but then they were running play action off of it. That was very encouraging to me. And I think Wilkerson has stood out in those scenarios and roles. And I think why he has stood out because of that play action and that one-on-one ability where he can create some separation, whether it's on a crossing route with some of his speed and stride or at the catch point.
All right, so more on the Bills preseason game. But first, please like, share, and subscribe. Like this, go to YouTube right now, search Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky, and like every video you possibly can within 50 seconds. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but please like every video. Our subscription is open as well. Also on Buffalo Pregame Substack, you can subscribe, and wherever you get your podcast, whether it be Apple, Spotify, anywhere in that realm. Please, that would do a significant help to us in terms of spreading the word to others and drawing them to the program. But let's round this out with a few more offensive notes. And I thought the offensive line struggled at times early on, and the running game could never really get going as a result. And specifically, Ray Davis couldn't get going at all. He played well into the first half and didn't finish with much. You had Ty Johnson and Frank Gore Jr. both showing their flashes. So there's nothing to get truly concerned about with Ray Davis. It's one preseason game, but I think one thing that he did show you is he just isn't James Cook. I've kind of been saying that throughout the offseason, and there's been a lot of fans who have this, in my opinion, incorrect notion that they could just plug Ray Davis in and he'll give you exactly what James Cook gives you, and I just don't find that to be the case. I was listening to Jerry Ostrowski on the Bills Squad show, and he was saying that the way that the Bills offensive line blocks is based on how James Cook runs the ball. So they've really structured this running game around Cook, and I think simply plugging in Davis and expecting the same results is a bit naive from Bills fans.
Yeah, and I think yesterday the struggles of Ray Davis started with the offensive line and the tight end position, even the wide receiver position. So the first run he had was a 1-yard gain. It was a mid-zone run, so a run that James Cook excels at, where they run to the weak side away from the tight end and bend it back to the tight end side. Well, on that first play, it was a 1-yard gain. Dawson Knox got blew up. Josh Palmer didn't pick up his guy. There's still some communication between Knox and Palmer and the receivers being worked out on the backside of these runs. And so the second play was a 4-yard gain, modest gain, gap run. Now that is something that he ran a lot of. This was out of 21 personnel, and they pulled the backside guard. He fell and then got up and went north and south for 4 yards. So it was not a bad gain. So I think what it comes down to is, yes, there's going to be an adjustment period if they're going to run Ray Davis on a lot of those zone concepts, mid-zone, outside zone, that they run with Cook. Because, again, I think Davis is more of a gap runner, and he has run zone really well with the Bills offense. So I don't totally agree with Ostrowski on that, because go back to the Jets game last year. He was getting north and south and running guys over in that same concept that Cook excels at. The difference is Cook can cut back that mid-zone run and house call it. Yeah. Ray Davis is not quite that guy. He's going to run through a few tackles and probably get into that third level, but James Cook is going to run away from people. And so I do agree with you. While I'll say that I don't think it's a steep drop-off between Cook and then Davis and Ty Johnson as a whole. Like, those two guys, Johnson and Davis, could be serviceable, but they don't have that breakaway speed that James Cook offers. And for a Bills offense that doesn't really have all that much speed at those other skill positions, James Cook is that much more important. He quite possibly is the most explosive player on the Bills offense, aside from Josh Allen. And so I totally understand why he is holding out or holding in and demanding a pay raise, because he is really important to the Bills offense when we're talking explosive runs and passes.
Yeah, I've been saying it all offseason. His game-breaking ability is something that you can't replicate within this offense. And in my opinion, the second most important offensive player behind Josh Allen. And I know that fans could also strike up an opinion for Deion Dawkins, maybe Spencer Brown, and some offensive linemen. But for my money, James Cook's value within this offense is right up there alongside QB1. Final thoughts on a couple more positions on the offense. We'll go tight end, quarterback, and then we'll round it out with special teams. Tight end, really tough day for the tight end threes. Zach Davidson, a couple of drops. Jackson Hawes had a drop. But I thought you saw some nice blocking ability from Jackson Hawes, and I think that's something that is pretty much automatic with him. He's been raved about by the Bills' veteran offensive linemen throughout training camp, and to see him get some hands on some opposing players in a game setting, I thought was pretty impressive. But on the other side, Zach Davidson, practice squad coming up soon.
Yeah, Hawes, he stood out to me. Yes, the drop, but he's got to have that. But he is also just an outlet player on that. I don't think he's going to gain much, but still look it in. Overall, I gave him a thumbs up. I thought he had a really good game because of the struggles early on in the offensive side of the ball, that first and second wave of the depth chart, where they were struggling. Trubisky was getting heated up. The Giants' defensive front, they were attacking in the run and pass game. And I thought when the Bills settled down, they did it by going heavy. So basically 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. And they started running some of that gap stuff we just talked about, where they're running counter Trey with Hawes at the point of attack, setting that, creating that displacement at the point of attack with technically sound hand placement and leverage and driving that end man on the line of scrimmage down. And we're not just talking about, guys that are 250-pound defensive ends. The Giants play a hybrid type scheme where they have bigger base defensive ends, and he was moving them. So I understand now what McGovern and a lot of these players were talking about, how he is ready to go day one. Especially if you're talking the blocking game, I thought he won a bunch at the point of attack. And I do think that he's going to have a huge role. I do think he's going to cut into some of the reps of Dawson Knox and Kincaid, especially because Kincaid isn't all that good of a blocker. I do think Hawes is going to carve out a really big niche, especially early in the season, if the Bills can't get to their 6 offensive lineman groups because of the injury to Alec Anderson.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him. And Chase Lunt, I thought, had a really big day on the offensive line. A lot of people raving about his performance. I'm not the biggest defensive line, especially offensive line guru. It's kind of always tough for me to give my impressions immediately after the game, but you could tell Chase Lunt finds himself to belong in the NFL, and I think some added versatility there will give him an extra chance to make the roster as well. Now, the quarterback 2 position, who do you have with a leg up here, or was it kind of a wash for you? I think it was kind of a wash. Maybe I heard a lot of people raving, maybe not raving, but giving Mitch Trubisky his flowers after this game, but I didn't see much from him. Didn't see a whole lot from Mike White. I thought White may have gotten the advantage, but how did you see things with the quarterback 2 position? He had the 39-yard touchdown from White to Hamler. He ended with 2 scores, did White. And then Trubisky, obviously, that long throw to Shavers, if he was able to trot that into the end zone and not end that drive with a field goal, it could have made his day look a lot better. But what did you see from the quarterbacks, and do you think anything kind of shifted in that quarterback competition at this point?
Yeah, great question. I think it was a push yesterday. I think you saw both of those players excel at where they typically excel. You saw some mobility from Trubisky. You also saw some inaccuracy. Mike White, you saw him set some protections prior to the snap to lead to a big touchdown to KJ Hamler, but at the same time, can't throw a stop route to Tyrell Shavers. So I think you saw both of what, makes these players good. I mean, Deion Dawkins got turned around by Abdul Carter. Osiris Torrance got turned around by Abdul Carter when he was bumped inside. And Trubisky did some things to make some plays with his legs and then his arm on that throw, specifically to Josh Palmer on that crosser. But I do think that there were struggles when Trubisky was under duress, and the Giants just took it to the Bills, especially early on against that first offensive line. And Trubisky did enough to make things work. I thought Mike White did a little bit of everything. I thought that you saw some of the velocity differences in his throws. You also saw him do a lot of stuff prior to the snap. Like I said, he set that protection and sent his offensive line, slid them to the left to pick up the rushers coming off the left. But at the same time, broke out the right side of the pocket because they didn't have enough guys to block everyone because they blitzed also a defender from the secondary. And so he had to extend that play so that Hamler could get open. And so I thought that it was a push, and both players did excel in ways that I expected them to. It's going to be a great finish to this competition because each of these players are making plays when they need to. And it was exciting to watch, kind of that battle throughout camp, but also in yesterday's game.
All right, we'll round it out with special teams. I don't know how much you can analyze a punter, but it's worth commenting. Brad Robbins has proven that he's still got quite a big leg, 53 net average. I think his longest went for about 58 yards, really booming some kicks out there and landing a lot of them inside the 20-yard line. And I was of the thought that they would keep Camarda. His track record seemed to speak a little bit better to a potential roster spot, but whatever they saw from Robbins throughout the offseason program, whether it be his punting, his chemistry with Tyler Bass on field goals, which is somewhat of a concern for me with Tyler Bass continuing to be out with that pelvic area soreness and those two not really being able to develop true chemistry. I'm sure they're going through some walkthroughs, this, that, and timing and the other thing. But at the same time, has Brad Robbins done enough after one preseason game to kind of solidify that role, or do you think they'll continue to watch that?
I think they're going to continue to watch it. And, some of what I saw at camp was there were some struggles to control some of his punts. I like him as a directional punter or a coffin corner type punter because he does a great job of kind of spinning the ball back away from the goal line. But you saw him kind of struggle with that yesterday a little bit. And like in camp, for me, some of those limited segments that I saw, it took him a few attempts to kind of nail down what he was trying to do. And I felt that and sensed that yesterday. But I do think that as much as want to focus on the punting side of things, I do, as you said, I think it's the holding that is really the most important thing. Just having talked to guys in the league that are kickers or holders, and even the snappers for that, and how important that symmetry is for those guys and rapport. I think that is probably the most important portion of this. We hope as fans that the Bills don't punt often, that they are one of the teams that punts the least. But when they do punt and they decide to punt, they want to do a good job of controlling the field and not allowing, obviously, any type of return with some good hang time, or more importantly, a directional punt, so that the coaches and the staff can kind of pinpoint what type of coverage they want to, whether it's, hey, attack right, attack left, and the direction of the actual punt. So that control, when it comes to punting, that control portion of it is probably the most important, more so than the big leg.
All right. I think we covered pretty much everything. I think that was a very in-depth conversation. Anything you think we left out, or any final thoughts you'd like to leave the people with before we let you plug what you have coming up?
No, it's nice to have football back, first of all, and it's even better to have the film from these games now back. And so I'll be diving right back in, but more from a specific player, focus from here on out. So definitely, pay attention to the Cover One YouTube channel, and also all of us on social media at Cover One. I appreciate you having me on. I love talking football, and especially to you, man. You're one of my OGs and one of my guys that always supported Cover One, and so we'll always be there for you as well, bro.
Appreciate you, my man, and I appreciate you taking some time to join us on this Sunday morning. It's football season. We're kicking into high gear, and you're going to be going fast and furious. So hopefully we can get you back on sometime soon. Appreciate you, Erik.
No doubt, brother.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.
All right. Erik Turner from Cover One. Great stuff from him, as always. Very analytical, very film-based analysis, and that's what we need on this show. That's why I bring these people in, the people that really look behind the scenes and can give that analytical approach to coverage. And I think Erik is as valuable as anybody in the Bills media sphere when it comes to his analysis and opinions. But I thought that was a great conversation, very in-depth, and as always, I thought two great guests yesterday as well. Mike Bunn, Anthony Prohaska, Bunn of Trainwreck Sports, Prohaska of Cover One, like Erik. So I want to thank all three for joining me this weekend, and I really want to tell you guys thank you for joining me as well. We did some good numbers here on the live side. The YouTube channel is slowly but surely starting to build, and that's honestly one thing I could really use your help with. Anybody who spent time listening to the show, if you could take the time to go to YouTube, subscribe, and like our videos, it would really do us a service in terms of spreading the word. We're going to have some other contributors joining us at Buffalo Pregame, I think, as we close in on week one. So trying to develop somewhat of a team here to give a little bit different look and more of a daily grind of the coverage to keep it coming fast and furious. And Scott, you were a great commenter on the show today. Scott Blakely, he just subscribed, and I would appreciate if all of you would subscribe to the Buffalo Pregame YouTube channel. Make sure you search Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky, also Buffalo Pregame with Alex Brasky Substack, and also wherever you get your audio podcast. But once again, thank you for joining me, and we will see you next time.